Welcome to the BOOMCLAP podcast where culture and conviction collide. I'm Rita Rogers.
And I'm Cecily Dickey.
All right, we've got a good conversation coming for you today. Current events is where it's at. We're talking about some things as they're happening today, which is a nice change of pace for us. Before we get into our conversation, I do want to thank Simply Eaten Tallow as one of our sponsors of this podcast. You can use the code BOOMCLAP on their website, simplyeatentallow.com, to save on your order. If you haven't used tallow products before, they're a really good one. Cecily, have you enjoyed them?
Oh my goodness, they're gorgeous. So you guys might remember, if you've been following us for a while, that we did a joint giveaway with Simply Eaten Tallow and Just the Inserts before Christmas, right? It was just before Christmas, and it was so popular, that giveaway. And she gifted us some of her products as well in that. Lip balm, which I use every single day. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I used to spend $40 a tube for like the only lip treatment that would help my super dry winter lips. And I haven't used it at all. I've only been using this tallow lip balm, which is way more affordable. And then the tallow balm itself for the face is like butter. It's so nice. She has just the right amount of everything in there that it's soft and luxurious. So I've been loving it.
Yeah, it's good. The lip balm is one of my favorites because a lot of the natural lip balms are made with a coconut oil, and I find that to be super drying.
Me too.
I do not find it moisturizing at all. So the tallow was a really pleasant surprise for me. I was kind of shocked. I love it.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I accidentally bought some lotion from a different company that I didn't realize had coconut oil in it. And we're done talking about Simply Eaten Tallow now, but you guys definitely check it out. But I had accidentally bought this body lotion and I didn't realize that it had coconut oil in it. And then I put it on and it's like immediately I could tell that my skin just kind of was like not in a good way. Like it was just dry. And then it prompted me, that feeling, to look at the ingredients. And sure enough, it was coconut oil.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work for me. I don't know. Not you either, I guess.
No, it doesn't, which is interesting because I really like coconut oil for other things, but not for my skin. So anyway, guys, check out Simply Eaten Tallow. Great small business. I know ads, it feels like an ad or whatever, but we really love their products and we love supporting small businesses, and we love bringing you guys small businesses as our sponsors because, it's just great. It's a good feeling all the way around.
Really? So it is. And that is how we can continue to podcast, and it's how we can pay our editor, right? And so for us, it's really special that we can use these small businesses as sponsors, and we develop these relationships with them, and it's very mutual. So we would never bring you guys anything we didn't think you'd like.
Yep. All right, guys. So let's talk some current events today. I don't even know where to start. There is so much. It feels like everywhere you look, anything you talk about can be stepping on a landmine right now. You feel like after the election, I felt this cohesiveness between people that was it was so I can't believe so many people voted this, voted this in, voted for this movement, voted for change. And now it's everyone that was once kind of unified for just this really short period of time, it's all this division again. And for me, primarily, I feel like there's some misplaced expectations of what people think should happen. People could probably accuse me of that actually, because I was accused of that not in that language, but to some degree. Because I have higher expectations sometimes for how things are communicated and the optics around them. But I think part of the reason is misplaced expectations or very different expectations from people based on what they think should be happening with these different movements. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I just want to make sure I'm following you correctly. So you think people have misplaced expectations on movements, people in politics?
Well, both misplaced and different. For example, let's give a really specific example. So the RFK MAHA movement is rolling, and the first thing he has to tackle is this measles outbreak in Texas. And there was an article that came out today. It was an opinion piece that he actually wrote for Fox News. And the headline that came with it is, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., measles outbreak is a call to action for all of us. Then the subheadline says MMR vaccine is crucial to avoiding potential deadly disease. First, I want to say, though the headline and subtitle is nowhere within the actual article itself. So that was pulled from somewhere else. And it would be good to know whether he wrote that actually himself, but just my better sense tells me no, just based on the fact that it's for Fox News and they probably have marketing experts who write their headlines and subheadlines simply to get attention, grab attention, and get people to click on the article, right? And the fact that it's not within the article itself. But people are really upset about that. And so I think it partially because some people didn't read the article, I posted online, and a lot of people that were upset didn't actually read the article. They just read the headline, which is a continuous problem. That is nothing new. People read headlines and not the article and get mad. And that's part of the news. Like, that's part of what they want to do within the news. Get people angry because that gets them to keep coming back for more, or spread the news, whatever. But another reason is people who did read the article are upset because I think they expected him to do something different. I think that they thought RFK was going to come in, or hoped at least he was going to come in and completely disavow vaccines and the vaccination process and turn his back on that and put his eggs all in another basket that we haven't before. And he's kind of walking a tightrope in this article and trying to kind of placate both sides, if you will, which kind of makes everyone mad, I guess. But I wasn't really mad reading it. I was like, well, this is kind of what I expected.
Me too. And I think there's probably a lot of people like us. So when I had first seen this article presented, like, because that's how things are, right? They're presented online in one way or another. For sure. And so when I first saw it presented and questioned, I was like, well, this is a misunderstanding of who RFK is and what he had said he would do and what he believes. So I think you're exactly right. It's complete misunderstandings, which I think stem from, again, we talk about this so often, but just that tribalism, right? Wanting to believe that because someone said A or B, they must go all the way to Z with you, which I think he made pretty clear throughout his campaign that wasn't the case. So I wasn't surprised to see it at all. But each time that I saw that presented today, which because of the algorithms was a lot, I was like, there's just people are missing the point and have missed the point. And they're in for a lot of disappointment then, not just with him and the MAHA movement, but with a lot of things. Because if that's what you're going to do, everything's going to seem shocking when it actually it isn't. Yeah.
I want to read just a little bit of it because I think it's really important for people to hear, exactly what was said. He did say that vaccines not only protect individual children from measles, but also contribute to community immunity, protecting those who are unable to be vaccinated due to medical reasons. And he talked about, I can't remember exactly how he said it, and I'm having trouble finding that part, but he just said vaccines basically prevent infectious disease, measles. And then he says it's a highly contagious respiratory illness with certain health risks, especially to unvaccinated individuals. The virus spreads through direct contact with infectious droplets when an infected person breathes, coughs, or sneezes. Early symptoms include, and then he goes on and says, prior to the introduction of vaccine in the 1960s, virtually every child in the United States contracted measles. For example, from 1953 to 1962, there were 530,000 confirmed cases and 440 deaths. And then he gives some statistics about Texas. And then he says, in response to the outbreak, I've directed Centers for Disease Control to basically provide vaccines as needed, laboratory support, and therapeutic medications. And that policy leaders have a shared responsibility in protecting. And then he talks about tens of thousands died with or of measles annually in the 19th century in America. By 1960, before the vaccine's introduction, improvements in sanitation and nutrition had eliminated 98% of measles deaths. Good good nutrition remains best defense against most chronic and infectious illnesses. Vitamins A, C, and D, and foods rich in vitamins B12, C, and E should be part of a balanced diet. So he covers both bases, really. And the one thing that I would ask people is, like, he doesn't really say anything inflammatory. I think the one area he could have done better is just clarifying that vaccines do come with their own set of risks. Right. And he didn't cover that at all, which I do think is important, that we're basically deciding which risk we're willing to accept when we decide or make a decision about vaccines in our children. And I do think that could have been handled much better. However, he's saying vaccines prevent infection. And that is true. I don't believe that to not be true. The question is, do vaccines also pose a risk? Right. And which risk do you feel most comfortable with? And, you know, I don't know. I struggle with both sides of this, because I see on one side, people are pushing vaccines. I see on the other side, people want all vaccines to go away. And neither side is going to be happy until they bring everyone from the other camp onto their side, either willingly or forcibly. And really what we say we want is medical freedom. So is that what we want? And I think we need to reevaluate what our expectations are of an RFK-led HHS. Is it truly informed consent and better information, better studies, more transparency about the risks, accountability on the part of vaccine manufacturers, and ability to hold them accountable for what they're putting out to the public? Yeah. Or is the goal for RFK to just tear down everything that we currently say, put something else up in its place, and then what are you going to have in 4 years when the medical community is bad and campaign's better than the other side? You're going to have them tear everything down and put everything back up. The best case scenario, in my opinion, is talking about the Constitution, talking about freedom to choose, talking about individual rights, and getting like a constitutional government back in place, tearing down some of these 3-letter agencies and rolling them back where it's like back in our hands, right? The choices are back in our hands as parents who have been given the right to parent our kids.
Yeah. I mean, and that, I feel like that's what I saw in that article. Like you said, he probably could have done better, just like anyone could, but there was more hints at medical freedom and choice in that article than we have seen in who even knows how long, right? And I was having a conversation with someone the other day who was talking about how they hate so much the vaping going on and marijuana. We were in a place that had a lot of public marijuana use. And
vaping and marijuana, or vaping both. Marijuana? Okay. Both. I was like, I didn't know you could. Okay.
I think you can. At least I think you can, because there was a lot of marijuana that smelled like raspberries and stuff. Like, you know, like you could tell it had been infused with something. And oh my goodness, it was awful. and so I don't love that either. Like, you know, these are habits that people have that do affect the people around them. And that's unfortunate. But this person was like, oh, I don't know. He's like, it's so bad for everyone, so we should just get rid of it. You know, I'm like, but... And they were comparing it to, like, you know, hard drugs or alcohol and how there's laws around that. And like, the difference is those things don't like contribute to any immediate impairment of your ability to like protect your own safety and the safety of others around you. And like, if we take that away, like, who's to say that something that else won't be taken away that we enjoy the freedom to have, you know? I'm like, it's just one of those things. It's like, what do you really want? Do you just want what you want? Or do you want there to be like the education, information, and then hopefully people are going to make decisions that are best for them? Because whatever laws you get in place that you want in place, there's going to be more coming that you don't. So I don't know. Yeah. It was just a clear example of it. And people don't really see that yet, you know?
Yeah. And that brings me to the most concerning thing for me in this article as usual, is something people probably like, just overlooked. But at the end, it said the measles outbreak in Texas is a call to action for all of us to reaffirm our commitment to public health. By working together, parents, healthcare providers, community leaders, and government officials, we can prevent future outbreaks and protect the health of our nation. So the call to action for all of us to reaffirm our commitment to public health, that to me is the most concerning thing in the article, because when you talk about reaffirming your commitment to public health, you're talking about reaffirming a commitment to all of us making decisions that fall in line with our view of what other people should be doing. Like,
that's where definitions matter. Like, what does public health mean to you?
Yes.
Because it could mean, well, I think I know what it means, but we need them to say that out loud so that we can make sure, do we want to actually all agree on public health right now or not,
Yeah, because there's common courtesy. I don't think public health is a bad thing from an aspect of common courtesy, like wash your hands, like stay home if you have a fever. But when it comes to my health being the responsibility of someone else's decision, that's what the definition of public health is right now. My health is someone else's responsibility by way of their decisions that could impact me. And I want that to be kind of dismantled. Like, I don't want that,
Yeah. What's so interesting is my husband and I went away on the weekend for just a nice little trip away. And we don't have TV at home. So we don't have commercials and we don't have the news, right? But we went to this hotel and it had TV with commercials and news. And it was so mind-blowing to us. And I try to do a really good job of keeping up and seeing what's going on culturally and how things are being presented and perceived. But to have this barrage of commercials and news programs, we were both just oh my goodness. And we could see them talking about things. And it was I was thinking and saying to my husband, see how much definitions matter? See these words that they're throwing around that people are just consuming and ingesting. And what you said, we all need to get on the same page about public health. Doesn't that sound great? Let's all be unified around this thing. Well, what is that thing? How do you define public health? And so many things that we saw on the news and commercials. I was so many drug commercials and stuff, right? I was just mind blown. And what kept coming to mind was well, what's your definition of whatever you're talking about? Because that really matters. And if people aren't, I had a couple people DM me actually in the last week on Instagram asking for trusted news sources or what I thought about this or that. And all I can say is if you're one of those people who wants to message a question like that, but hasn't yet, and you're wondering, what do you do about reading the news or hearing the news? Ask those questions. If they're saying something, ask the question, well, what do they mean by that? Because at that point, you can go to any news source you want at that point, as long as you're able to read it and ask the questions that, they linger in the text of what people are saying or writing. But it's our job to see hey, that hasn't been defined, and pull it out. You can have any news source you want if you're able to see what's undefined within the text and figure out what they mean by it.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And speaking of that, it reminds me of, sometimes I'll pull a headline and the caption or whatever from Yahoo News or from MSNBC. And people are well, I don't trust that. I'll get DMs invariably every time. Well, I don't trust that. You got that from MSNBC. I'm it doesn't matter where I got it from. It matters, the conversation around it matters. And whether or not we're listening to what the person speaking is saying, because, you can read news from any news source, just like you said, but the part that matters to be able to is whether or not you're able to basically extrapolate the information from the article itself that is pertinent to understanding what is going on. Are you able to differentiate the emotionally charged language that the author put in versus the actual words Trump said, if he's the character that they're talking about, you know what I mean?
So important.
Are you able to read that emotional undertone and figure out what they're trying to get you to feel versus what you actually feel about what happened,
Yeah.
Those are really important things.
Yeah, I'm actually going to plug Shanda's course for a minute, the worldview course that if you guys listened a few weeks ago, we had Shanda on, talked about worldview, and my son is in her worldview course right now. And he's like in the real time one where you like meet with the instructor once a week and all of that. But if you've missed the boat on that, you can still actually do like the self-paced one. And my son was working on it this morning actually, and filling out this like internet scavenger hunt thing where the purpose was to show that you can't always believe necessarily what you read on the internet. You have to be willing to think about it a little bit. And it was so just cute seeing his worksheet, because I can see he's already, and it's maybe because we talk about these things a lot in our house, but he would write down an answer to whatever he had to Google. And, all his answers started with, according to the Washington Post or whatever resource, it's like, because it matters. The source matters, because like the source matters. But like Rita was saying, it can be from Yahoo, MSNBC, doesn't matter, as long as you are able to look for context clues, essentially. And that's what Shanda's course is teaching, even in little like treasure hunt exercises like that. It's like context clues matter, source matters, and being able to think about all of that together.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, the whole MAHA thing, I feel a little bit bad for RFK just because he has such a big job. But
I wondered when he was campaigning, I'm like, why do you even want to do this? It sounds terrible. I mean, I'm glad, but it sounds terrible.
Well, I feel like MAHA was so catchy, and it went along with Make America Great Again, Make America Healthy Again. I mean, you need those kind of like, basically propaganda laced statements to get people on board anymore. And it needs to be short and sweet. But at the same time, I'm like, there's no possible way you can make America healthy. Like, that is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to put forth better information to help make laws better so that parents have rights, so that drug manufacturers are held accountable. It would be great if we could basically disentangle the government and pharma. Oh, that's something I want to talk about. Hang on just a second. Remind me, big pharma. I want to talk about that.
Okay.
But sorry, Cecily. But where was I going now? No,
I don't know.
My train was going pharma. Straight, and then all of a sudden it just like completely derailed. And
someone pulled the thing.
But anyways, it's just like, you can't personally make America healthy unless you're a dictator, because in order to make us healthy, you would have to completely change what is on the shelves and completely basically just destroy different companies. Like, you would have to completely do away with certain companies, and then mandate choices for America, Americans. And that's not really freedom. So if we're going to stick to the Constitution, if we're going to stick to the Bill of Rights, like, we're still liable as individuals. And I know that I spewed a lot of frustration on you at the beginning of MAHA about this. And I was like, people aren't ready to hear it. So I'm not really going to put much of it out there, because people are just going to be mad at me because everybody's so happy about MAHA. But like, he can't do that. He can do so much good, but he can't truly come into your home and make you healthy and make you make healthy choices. So anyway.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how I want to say what I'm thinking right now about freedom and capitalism. Like, these things are so important, and if we can get the public actually thinking about ways to be healthier and to actually care about that, that's going to be like capitalism at its best, right? Like, instead of the dictator shutting down, Frito-Lay's or whatever, Nestle, whatever companies, it's like people are actually just going to choose with their dollar because they care about their health.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking of is like capitalism and all of that. It works best when people care, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, we have to be open to it when people don't as well. Otherwise, all we're left with is dictatorship. Today, I get to share a new sponsor with you, and that is Avaire Collective. This one is special to me because I actually know the owners of this company, the Penner family. We went to the same church when they lived here in BC, and they've now moved south all the way down to Tennessee, and they are living their best Southern life right now. This business is mom and 4 daughters owned. And these ladies understand the importance of dignity in everyday dressing. Their thoughtfully curated collection brings simple femininity to your wardrobe, making even the ordinary feel special. And you can't see me right now, but I will tell you, I am on their website looking at their catalog, and it is the most beautiful feminine clothing that you have ever seen. So you need to check them out. On Instagram, they're Avaire Collective. That's AVAIRE. And their website is avairecollective.com. And if you use the code BOOMCLAP10, that'll save you 10% off your first order. You need to go and look at these beautiful feminine detail they have in this clothing. It's so well done. So happy for them that they've created this opportunity for themselves and their daughters. You will love them just as I do. avairecollective.com, code BOOMCLAP10 to save 10%.
And I mean, you can do a lot of good to help. You can make people healthy in some aspects for just like the way you direct tax dollars, right? Like not allowing tax dollars to be used to buy crappy foods for the kids' school lunches or buy soda with your, whatever it's called in your state. SNAP, I think, is our program in Illinois. But you know, you can dictate to some degree, right? Because you're using taxpayer dollars, but just those real personal choices you can't if we want to remain free. But what I was going to say about Big Pharma is the other night, Levi and I were talking because I'd seen people kind of posting after RFK was actually confirmed, and they were excited about, quote, taking down Big Pharma and all of these things. And I'm just like, but is that what we really want either? You know, like, yes, Big Pharma to be taken down, but what is Big Pharma? Like that also needs to be defined, Cecily, like you said earlier about definitions. And I think for me, like when I think about what Big Pharma actually is, like there's pharma and there's Big Pharma and there's big food and there's big ag and all of these things with the word big attached. And when I hear the word big attached, it's government food, it's government pharma, it's government, you know, being involved in that. Like what makes pharma big? You know, pharma can be big on its own. However, what makes it big and what makes it a problem for the individual in America is the fact that it is attached to government. If you remove and disentangle government from pharma, you don't have that big where it's encroaching on your life, where you're made to make certain decisions because the government says so. And that's the real problem, because I don't think we really want pharmaceutical companies destroyed, you know? Like, we have kids, like there are kids in our community right now and friends of mine who are in the hospital benefiting from these pharmaceuticals and from modern medicine of no fault of their own, you know, not because they made some bad decision, because they need expert medical care at a level that can't be provided by a home remedy. And so I don't think we necessarily want to completely disregard pharmaceuticals and disregard our modern medicine. But at the same time, getting government out of it to the point that we can make our own decisions would be a really good thing.
Well, and this is where I'm going to say something that people are going to be like, oh, she's just an RFK fan to the end and she'll never say anything back. Because that's not it. It's just, but I think that we can, this is what I appreciate about him, is that he's measured. And he knows that we need modern medicine, you know, unless we really want to start dying like they were in the 1700s before any of this came along, you know, and we had a very low life expectancy and people lived with tragedy on a daily basis. You know, we need it. And I feel like he's so measured in the fact that he wants to make changes, but he wants to make constitutional changes. And he wants to do it in a way that might actually be sustainable and last beyond 4 years.
Well, that was one of my concerns actually with him prior. Like, I don't know the constitutional thing. I don't know. I don't really want to get into that now, but I think he is kind of a big government guy. I don't think he's necessarily a small, limited government constitutional guy. But I think he wants to make choices or changes that involve allowing people to have the information to make the choice on their own. Yeah. But I don't think necessarily he wants to get back to a constitutionally founded limited
You're
government.
Probably right. But I actually believe he's smaller government minded than he even thinks he is. And I could be totally wrong about that. But I think, you know, he's just coming from the Democrat side and it's sometimes hard to rationalize with how much you actually believe in limited government until it's been a while.
And I don't know
you
that
know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't think he's really changed. That's what I mean. Like, I think he's the same.
Yeah.
I think he's stayed the same.
Yeah.
And I think like,
right.
Well, with exception, like I think he's a listener. Like I think he has listened to moms and listened to people over time. And he is not necessarily unchanged as far as like inability to listen and change his opinion. But I think he's very measured and just kind of steady. Maybe that's a good word.
Which is good. So. I mean, so let's talk about not steady for a second.
Yeah.
Do you know where my mind is going right now?
I'm pretty sure, but just tell me.
I'm going to the Trump Gaza video.
Oh yeah, that's where I thought you were going.
So, I mean, I feel like it's so interesting because I've had people message me and thank you guys for messaging me on Instagram, even when I'm not like posting things on Instagram. Thank you for knowing I'm still around. I appreciate that. I appreciate that you can still seek me out, even if I'm not posting. But people wondering, what do I think about this Trump Gaza video? I'm like, well, truthfully, I'm not surprised. I'm not like surprised by it, but he's certainly not measured. But I think we kind of knew that about him as well. I'm trying to bring it back to how I said, speaking of not measured, I'm trying to bridge that by saying like, we kind of already knew he wasn't. Anyway, Rita, tell us your thoughts on that video. We can talk about that for a bit.
I think it's completely disrespectful. First of all, let's talk about the fact that like barely anyone has touched this video. Like
weird.
I haven't hardly seen any Christian influencers or whatever, conservative influencers talking about this at all. And last I looked, I mean, it's probably, I can't look on my phone because I'm recording on my phone today because my computer wouldn't turn on. So that's unfortunate. But last I looked, it had 56 million views. Okay. 56 million. His videos, his normal videos, I'm not saying his other videos are normal. Like whatever they are. I haven't watched all his videos, but I'm just saying his other videos on the page have like 5 million.
Interesting. Yeah.
So 56 million versus like 5 or 6 million views on his other one. So this has gotten massive viewership. And to have that kind of a viewership on a video and for nobody to be talking about it is really concerning to me, especially when you have these high paid mega influencers who talk about politics and conservatism all the time. I'm not actually sure that I want to say this on air, but I'm going to say it. And then if you think it's bad, we can edit it out. But I had somebody message me, thank you for bringing it up. And they said they were very concerned with it as well. And they said they were a little bit disappointed in Allie Beth Stuckey's reaction because she had posted a video on it and just basically said, that was weird. And that was basically the extent of her commentary. And I said, I saw that she had posted a video. I saw it in my feed, but I didn't click on it. I just assumed she had a similar viewpoint to mine. And so I didn't even watch it. Yeah. Assumption was wrong, I suppose. And then I guess she ended up taking it down because I went to look for it. It wasn't there. And then the person who messaged me also had looked for it and it wasn't there because I guess she was kind of getting like some pushback for not giving a stronger stance. And well, go ahead.
I sought out her episode that she did on this.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I haven't listened to her podcast in a really long time, but I wanted to hear her take on this and to see if it was more than what I saw on Instagram, because I really do appreciate her commentary most of the time. You know, she's a very smart person who's very biblical. And so I wanted to listen to the episode, and she definitely disliked it, you know, from a biblical worldview perspective. She had great points about idol worship and all of that. Like everything that you and I would have thought she did say, but she did just kind of laugh her way through the video. Whereas I'm thinking, if it had been Kamala Harris or Joe Biden that had posted a video like that, there wouldn't have been any laughter through it. Like, oh, you know, Trump, so Trumpy, you know, to do something like this, but it's actually not funny. And I'm not just saying that, I'm not talking about her, but I'm just saying from my perspective, there's nothing funny about it. And I think if it would have been done on the Democrat side, Christians on the right would have been like, this is demonic. This is evil.
We know they would have been. Not like I think. We know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think it's very inconsistent that because Trump is so Trumpy and unique and he's on the right, we can just laugh about it. We can say it's wrong, but laugh about it. And I'm like, I don't think it's okay to like laugh about this. This is not good. And maybe he meant it as a joke and his team meant it as a joke, but it's not actually funny. Whether you're a Christian or not, this is a mockery. This is a mockery. And I
just felt very disrespected as a voter. And somebody, so it's just interesting. Like I got messages saying like, you can bash Trump all you want was one of the messages I got, and basically telling me to give him time and we knew what we were getting. And I'm like, I'm not bashing Trump. Yeah. There is so much good I think he's doing right now, but I think that he could go about things in such a better way. And I don't want to move too far. I do want to say more about what I was just about to say, but I don't want to move too far away from this video because there is more to say. But initially, I guess the reason how this video came about is basically what I told you, Cecily, when we first saw it. What I thought probably happened was somebody generated this AI video. I didn't think he had it made. And then he just found it and reposted it. And that is what happened. Okay. Apparently, these two video creators made a satirical video, like kind of mocking what they thought Trump Gaza was going to be like based on what he said. And then he reposted it. But that doesn't make it satire from him. And I was told the other day from somebody who has an inside track, basically to the White House that it was satire, that he meant it as satire. And I'm like, I don't care how he meant it. Even if he meant it as satire, that is not funny because this is a very serious situation. And the fact, like, I don't know why I'm so stuck on this part of the video, but there were women on the beach dancing in beards. Like they had beards on their face. Like, and some people in my DMs were like, this is exactly who we knew Trump was. He's posting. I'm like, well, no, actually, he just said there were two genders. So I don't know. It feels very disrespectful to the people involved, disrespectful to the voters. And
I didn't like the language. And again, I don't know who created it, like those people but the language in the lyrics to Trump, I forget Trump exactly.
Gaza shining bright, something brand new light
and whatever. I'm like, no.
I've had the song in my head from watching it like 2 or 3 times. Like it just gets stuck in your head. It's like a personal torture.
Truly. I don't know. It's just so unfortunate. House and Habits comment was right at the top. Like, it's not too late to take this down. Actually, it is, but you can do it anyway. Essentially, it's like, please do. Just, I know that Trump is very, I don't know, he is who he is, right? And he doesn't like to back down from what he has said or what he has done. But there's so much strength in being like, you know what? Upon reflection,
this was unwise.
It was unwise. And it's okay. It's okay to do that. It's okay to take down an Instagram post and be like, that wasn't a good idea. My bad.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what's lacking from the conservative commentator community is just like holding them accountable to these things. And I'm not saying all his mean tweets and all that stuff. Like, I'm not so sensitive. I can't handle it. Actually, I appreciate some of that. I personally appreciate some of his brashness and just the fact that like you never have to wonder what he's thinking. But like with that, I do wonder what he's thinking. Like, are you okay?
What is anyone thinking?
Very strange.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess part of the problem for me is that people really voted against where we were as a country. Okay. And he had a lot of independent voters make last minute decisions to vote for him. A lot of people came over from the MAHA movement and were willing to support Trump based on RFK and things like that. And we have a real chance in America to roll back some of these. And I know this is not going to be perfect. I know there are things that Trump's going to do that are not going to be perfect. We have Stargate, we have AI, we have all of these things. But there is a chance for America in some ways to be rolling back the size of government to restore a constitutional foundation. But in order to do so, we have to talk about the Constitution. We have to talk about limited government. We have to talk about what the function of government should be. And if we're going to go around with Doge calling people lazy government employees instead of saying, no, we're actually downsizing because we need a more limited government. We are way over budget. We are borrowing hand over fist from China. We actually don't have our own financial backing anymore. We're looking to China for everything. If we're going to just call people lazy and tell them that's why we're downsizing, that is extremely ineffective.
Yeah. And inflammatory and divisive.
Yes.
And all of the things.
And so you have all these people that have came over and crossed over to vote for you, and a lot of people in your base that really don't understand the foundation of America and what limited government is and why we have it and how it should be, because we're just so used to government being involved and intertwined in every aspect of our life that if you would talk about some of those things, people would start to understand, and we could get to a place where we could make these changes and they would be longer lasting because people would have a foundational understanding.
Well, and here's the empathetic side of me where I'm like, I do feel for him, Donald Trump, and everyone aligned with him, as far as like, there have been so many lies and assumptions made about him that I can 100%. See you get to the point where you just say, oh, whatever I say doesn't matter, because it's funny for me that they're going to misinterpret it once again. Like, I was listening to the Trump Zelensky thing in the Oval Office. Like, I listened to the whole thing this morning because everyone's only seen that one chunk, right? Everyone knows the one chunk I'm talking about, but I was like, I just need to see the whole thing to understand the true context. Anyway. And in there, one of the reporters had asked some sort of question about, I think, where Trump thought he would stand in history based on like how he does these things. And he had said, well, I would compare myself to George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. Actually, I'm better than them. And then he had like kind of had like the 3 dots at the end. And he's like, obviously I'm kidding, but it's like, because of the way people have talked about him and treated him, it's led him to say even more of this really inflammatory stuff that if you only listen to the clips, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy is completely unhinged. And I'm not saying he's totally hinged. I'm just saying he's probably not completely unhinged, And so I can see how these things happen. And, because you figure it doesn't matter what I say, people are going to think what they want. You'll say things like lazy government employees instead of we're actually trying to get back to where we should be.
That's a good point.
It's so unfortunate. And this is the cycle that we as a culture, US and Canada, do the same thing. We perpetuate this drama.
Yeah. It's on us to break it, really, because it is.
I mean, but it's also and it's I want to keep holding his feet to the flames. Like, it is on us to break it, but also as a leader, just keep it together,
but we can help by like calling for better, what I mean? And that's frustrating to me that like, I can't say one bad thing about Trump without being called like a basher. It's like, no, I actually am a Trump supporter. I've been a lifelong conservative as far as how I live my life. And as far as politically, like, I just want limited government. Like, I don't need everybody to live exactly like I do, but I want limited government and less government in my life. And I voted for Trump 3 times. Like, I have voted for Trump. I am not a Trump basher because I have some complaints about how he does a few things. Yeah. But on the other side of the coin, if I say something good about Trump, suddenly, like, I'm worshiping him. Like, I worship him. I can't believe you worship a human. Like, don't you know? And I'm like, okay, people, like, there is this thing called nuance, and there is this thing called critical thinking. And we can have some criticisms of someone that we do think is doing a mostly good job. And we can also have some points that are good about people we may not agree with as well. Like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And it's very frustrating that we live in this world where it seems to be. And I know people often see my more critical side of people maybe than my side that praises things, but that's just because that's where the conversation is. Like, generally good things don't have to be talked about as much, whereas like the things that are maybe not so great, I think deserve a bit more discussion. Does that make sense? Like, things that are just going along smoothly, it's just like your own life. Like you could have all these good things happen in a day, and then you come home, your husband comes home, and you tell him the one bad thing that happened. It's not because your life sucks and it's bad. It's because that one bad thing deserves a little more discussion because it's an area that you might want to improve. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's going to be people listening to that that'll be like, oh, well, if we focused on the 10 good things instead of the one bad thing, then, so there's something to be said for that too.
Yeah.
But who knows where exactly it falls on the scale? I think sometimes those bad things, they absolutely can't be ignored, no matter how good everything else is, right? And there's other times where it's like, that was just a unfortunate event, and I'm going to pour my energy into these positive things, and that's better. It's very circumstantial.
But if your job is online conversation, like there's usually like you can post something about the good thing, but it's just like clapping, and there's really not any conversation there.
It's
and
true.
If your goal is to try to get conversation going to like be able to think about.
And honestly, if you talk too much about the good things, people will accuse you of that worshiping people, right?
My name is Weston, and I'm Cecily's oldest son. Every morning, I'm the guy that grabs the laptop and brings it to the breakfast table so that our family can watch World Watch News together. I really enjoy this part of our routine and find it's a great way to start the day. I like to hear about all the latest news going on both in North America and around the world. I feel like World Watch News is teaching me how to consume news while thinking critically, no matter if the news is good or bad. It is always presented from a Christian perspective with biblical grounding. The older I get, the more I realize how important it is to be informed about the important things going on in the world. I'm so glad to have World Watch News to keep me up to date. Go to worldwatch.news or click the link in the show notes and enter the code BOOMCLAP25 to get a 90-day free trial.
Let's talk about the Trump Zelensky thing for a second, because I actually do think that was a good thing. Like I think it was good. I had some messages from people that thought that should not have happened publicly. But I think these things mostly happen behind closed doors. So who knows if this went any different than they usually do. I'm guessing they tend to be somewhat heated like this if they need to be. And we just don't normally see it. But I do think that in this case, the public probably did need to see it. I mean, we're in unstable times. We have the possibility of a world war, knocking at our doorsteps. And so I do think that it's good maybe for people to see what's actually happening. And I don't know.
This is another thing where I do have mixed feelings on it, and which is why I wanted to watch the whole thing. And I will say throughout the whole thing, I think it was like 49 minutes or something that I watched. And I would say, and I could be wrong about this, so no one go and like check the timestamps for me. I'm just saying the bulk of it was like, you could tell they had disagreements, and I could tell Zelensky was not so sure. He wasn't willing to commit to like anything that Trump was like. Trump was very much like saying like, his presentation was like, this is how it's going to be, even if he wasn't in those exact words. And so you could see Zelensky's body language and the way he would respond was without affirming the way that Trump was speaking. So you could tell that they weren't exactly on the same page throughout, but they remained very civil towards each other until JD Vance got involved. And as usual, JD Vance was excellent. The way he speaks is just very good. And it wasn't until JD Vance kind of came in Trump and America's defense that Trump was kind of like, oh, hey, let's do this, let's throw this down a little bit. So it was just really interesting to see that. And I don't even know what I think about that necessarily. And I don't know whether I think these things should always be behind closed doors or whether people should see it. I was just very interesting to watch, kind of like how that worked, how the series of events that led to them disagreeing. You could see it was like under the surface the whole time. But it wasn't until JD Vance kind of spoke up in defense that Trump was ready to kind of throw that hammer down. So it was very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying always behind closed doors or always in public. I think in this instance, I can personally say I do think it was good that it was publicized.
Just because of how unstable things are. And like because of that, people have such varying opinions on what the role of the rest of the West should be in this war, right? And keeping in mind that what's happening there may not stay there if NATO gets more involved, So,
and the fact that like we need to be able to defend ourselves as well. Like we are borrowing from China to send arms to another nation. Like,
yeah, it's wild.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
And then the things that we've sent there allegedly, and I don't even know if it's allegedly anymore or if it's like actually we can prove it, aren't staying there.
Yeah. Well, that's something that I would love.
So
that's something that I would love to see some like investigative journalism on, like what's happening, what is happening with the resources that are being sent out there. And we talked about this. We don't want to talk about this too long. We said before we started, because neither of us feel like we're super experts on, stuff like this.
I feel confident enough to have an intelligent conversation.
Right.
But I don't feel like I am the person to impart wisdom upon anyone of, what should be happening with a war or geopolitics.
Yeah.
But we can assess these situations.
Totally. And so I'm just prefacing what I'm about to say with acknowledging the fact that I'm certainly no expert. But what I find very interesting is borrowing from China to supply Ukraine, knowing that China would not be on the side of Ukraine. China would be on the side of Russia if it came down to like a World War III type of situation, And so this isn't even anything. It's just more of like a question that I'm putting out into the world. Like, how does any of this work? Because China knows why the US is borrowing this stuff to give it to Ukraine. And China would say that Ukraine's not their ally, Russia is. So why does any of this happen? How does any of this happen?
Well, initially, do you remember this conversation initially back when it started? The fact that China and Russia are not necessarily allies. You would not consider them allies by any stretch of the imagination, but
they would join up if they needed to.
Aligned to, they would align against us, right?
Exactly.
But some of the conversation then, like what was it, 3 years ago now, was the fact that China and Russia do want to break down the United States. And so some of this could have started from that perspective.
Right.
Like,
let them dig their own hole and we'll help them.
Dig in their own grave, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, I say interesting because it is, but it's also just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
There's something else I was going to say, and now I can't remember, but I don't know. There's some good videos we could put in the show notes. Michael Schellenbarger had a really good take on this. I don't know who else, but we could put some videos in the show notes if you guys want some more information on it.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, do you want to talk about the hospital shooting? I think that is something that has not been discussed at all, but
I hadn't heard about it except from you.
Yeah. So I don't know what's happening with it. So guys, like I said, I'm recording on my phone. So I have my laptop sitting here, and for some reason the light on it like turns up and down automatically depending on how the sun is shining. And I'm like, I can't read it. Anyway. Okay. So the article says police officer killed, 5 other people wounded after gunman holds Pennsylvania hospital staff hostage, officials say. And long and short of it, I think that he had his name is DeLonges Archangel Ortiz. He was 49 years old. I think he had a family member in the hospital who was delivered bad news. I'm not sure if the family member died. I think so. And how I initially became aware of this, I saw a family member of mine who is a nurse post share a post from a nurse from that hospital who was talking about the fact that she had just held this guy's hand, talked him through the situation for his family member, kind of commiserated with him about his loved one and their situation, a family member she had just lost, and they were kind of grieving together and talking, and everything was okay. But then apparently he came back and I think days later, with a gun, maybe tied people up, held them hostage, and then a police officer was killed and several other people were injured. And very sad. It seems like a straightforward story, but I think the part worth talking about is how we talk about people who work in healthcare now and kind of dehumanize them from a standpoint of just like making them out to be the problem and kind of maybe not understanding each other. So I don't know. I told my husband when I read this, I said, I actually like would stand in the ICU sometimes, like if I was holding pressure in a room for a long amount of time and just like standing there thinking, like I would look around and think about where I would hide if somebody came in to shoot the place up. And that may seem illogical, but like we would have shooting victims in our old ICU. We had moved at a point in time, like we went from one ICU on one floor and they built us a new ICU. And so like, when we went to the new ICU, it was not a locked unit. And our old one was like you had to buzz in and it was locked and it was smaller. So it was easier to see. But this unit was bigger and people just walked in and out, family members coming in all the time without you knowing. And so like we would have shooting victims and our ICU wouldn't be formally locked down. And like the gunman would still be at large in Champaign. And you'd be like, okay, well, this feels very safe right now. So we had those situations, but also like family members were so unhinged. They would just like kind of not all of them, but there were times when family members really like had unreasonable expectations for what you could do for their family member and like what your responsibility was. And also just not your responsibility necessarily, but like whether or not you even cared about their family member, you know, and like, even if you obviously did, if something bad was happening, they would take it as you personally were doing this to their family member. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's important, even if we disagree with the people in the hospital doing, you know, whatever treatments that we maybe don't agree with, to remember that they are people, you know,
this actually makes, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it's very similar to school shootings. I mean, not necessarily in the impact as far as like school shootings are, you know, there's a lot of kids around that could be victimized by something like that. But, you know, it's this person who has some sort of vendetta against like, they feel they've been harmed in some way or, you know, or not understood, or you didn't try hard enough for them. And now this is how they feel entitled to take this revenge. So it's definitely something that happens in a hospital setting and because people
emotions run high.
Yes, emotions run high. And we do live in a very narcissistic world right now where it's like, you know, what's going on with them is the whole world. And if you mess up that world in some way, so this is just a huge cultural issue that people do tend to think this way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. There's not really much else to say about it. I don't know.
It's just another example, you guys, like we were talking at the very beginning of this episode, how, you know, there seemed to be this period of time after the election where there was a little bit of unity, right? And that just really fell apart. And there's so much brokenness in that last story that Rita told about this shooting. And it's because everyone is trying to find meaning and unity in places where you just can't, you know, and that's the importance of the gospel. And that's why everything we talk about is rooted back to values and what is actually true and what actually matters, because that's bringing a little bit more kingdom to the earth, right? And that's what brings unity. Every single man-made thing or man-made idea, which is why I have so much trouble with that Trump Gaza video, because it's all, and again, satire created by someone, but it doesn't matter because he reshared it, you know, but it's like this man-made something is going to bring peace and unity and freedom, but it's not, unfortunately. Only Jesus does that. And that's why everything is broken. And that's why it's so important to, if you have the light in you, the light of Jesus, you need to share it, because that's the only thing that's actually going to make any change in the darkness.
Yeah. Very true. Well said, Cecily.
Okay. Well,
the only thing else I have to add about the Trump Gaza video is if you did not hate AI before,
it's awful.
Let this be the thing.
Well, thank goodness it was so obviously AI though.
Oh my gosh. Yes, true.
I think people are developing
until it progresses.
What's that?
A what? What did you say?
An AI, like EYE, AI. Like we're able to see it now. Whereas when it first started, it was like, what's happening? And now it's like, well, that's AI, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway. Okay. Did you have anything else to say about it or was...
No, I don't think so.
Did you already?
Happy birthday. Guys, it's Cecily's birthday today and we're recording. So
yes, it's my birthday today and it was Rita's birthday 2 days ago. So
yeah.
Happy birthday to you.
Yeah. Our birthday month.
It's our birthday month as far as like we're both born in March, but it's also the podcast birthday month and coming up March 19, you guys. So March 12 is going to be next week and we're going to have an episode with Steve Kim. You know, we love Steve Kim from Apologetics Canada. It's a great episode. So catch that one. And then the week after that, March 19, we're doing our Q&A and O episode where you guys submit questions and we will give either answers or opinions, usually opinions, because what is an answer really most of the time, right? So those episodes are so fun. This is our 3rd year doing that, I think, right? So
yeah,
you guys love them. We love them. They're so much fun to do. So yeah, big month, 4 years podcasting, plus we both turned a year older.
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks for listening, you guys. If you want to find us outside of the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at BOOMCLAP Podcast or individually. I'm on Instagram at cecily.dickey or my website, thegracetogrow.com.
And you can find me at ritarogersco.com or Rita Rogers Co on Instagram. Thanks for listening.